Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Dr. Carrie Meridian, and welcome back to the Meridian Astrology Forecast. Each week, we spend a few minutes together exploring what the stars are inviting us to notice. And because astrology predicts our future, or not because astrology predicts our future, but because I believe it can help us to understand ourselves more deeply, make more conscious decisions or choices, and return to who we truly are. And this week, the sky is asking us to be very honest about whether the life we are creating actually reflects the person we are becoming. So, let's take a look at the week ahead, shall we? If I could sum up this week in one message, I think it would be this. Stop abandoning yourself to preserve a life that no longer feels like yours. I know that may sound a little dramatic, but this is a powerful week. We are still feeling the effects of a rare pattern involving 4 major planets: Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These planets are not all sitting together in the same sign. Instead, they are connecting across the sky, almost like they're having one large cosmic conversation. And each one brings a different part to the story. Well, Jupiter asks us to grow. Uranus asks us to change. Neptune asks us to dream and trust our spiritual knowing. And Pluto asks us to transform at our deepest level. But altogether they ask, are you ready to grow into a life that is more authentic than the one you have outgrown? Because returning to yourself does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like restlessness. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like realizing that the things you once wanted no longer feel right for the person you are today. That does not mean you are lost, though, please understand. It may mean you are finally beginning to hear yourself again. So, let's talk a little more about these 4 planets because they are setting the larger tone for this week. Jupiter is now in Leo, and Jupiter expands whatever it touches. And Leo is connected to creativity, courage, visibility, joy, leadership, and self-expression. This is the part of us that wants to say, here I am, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer. But Jupiter is also communicating with Uranus and Gemini. Uranus brings awakening, disruption, innovation, and sudden insight. In Gemini, it can change how we think, how we communicate, how we learn, and how we share our ideas. So you may notice new ideas arriving quickly. You may feel inspired to speak differently, create differently, or finally say something you have kept inside for way too long. Then we have Neptune in Aries. Neptune represents dreams, imagination, spirituality, intuition, but sometimes illusion. Aries says, begin. So Neptune and Aries ask us to stop merely dreaming about a new life and begin becoming the person who can live it. And then there is Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto transforms from the roots. Aquarius represents authenticity, freedom, community, innovation, and the future. So Pluto in Aquarius asks us to release the identities, systems, and expectations that prevent us from being fully ourselves. When we put those 4 voices together, the message sounds something like this. Dream bigger. Think differently. Stop hiding. Release what is no longer true. And begin creating from the person you are becoming. But here is the important part. Listen up. You do not have to reinvent yourself overnight. Returning to yourself is not about becoming a completely different person. It's about removing everything that taught you to doubt the person you already are. So ask yourself, what truth about myself have I been afraid to fully live? Okay? So let's talk about what's happening in transits in the week. So we begin the week with Saturn stationing retrograde in Aries. Yay! Now, Saturn is often called the strict teacher of the zodiac. It represents responsibility, discipline, boundaries, structure, and the foundations we build our lives upon. And when Saturn turns retrograde, that teacher turns inward. So this is not necessarily about external, but it's about internal accountability. So Saturn asks, are your choices aligned with the future you say you want? So you may feel called to revisit a commitment, rethink a goal, strengthen a boundary, or admit that a certain structure in your life is no longer working. And because Saturn is in Aries, this can be especially connected to your identity, independence, courage, and personal direction. So maybe you have been waiting for some sort of permission. Maybe you've been making decisions based on what everybody else says or needs. Maybe you've been rushing forward just to prove you are making progress. Saturn retrograde reminds us that slower does not mean unsuccessful. A pause can be productive. A revision can be wise. Changing your mind can be an act of integrity. Returning to yourself means becoming responsible for the life that is truly yours, not continuing to carry a life built around someone else's expectations. So the question for Saturn is, what do I need to restructure so I stop betraying my own needs? So, on Monday, the sun is in Leo and it opposes Pluto in Aquarius. It also trines Neptune in Aries and connects supportively with Uranus in Gemini. This means the sun begins activating that larger four-planet pattern. And because the sun represents our identity, vitality, confidence, and conscious self, this can make the larger changes feel very personal. The sun opposite Pluto can reveal where fear, control, power struggles, or old survival patterns have been influencing your choices. You may notice where you have been trying to control an outcome because trusting yourself felt too vulnerable. You may recognize that you have been shrinking, staying silent, or holding on to something simply because releasing it would require you to become someone new. But at the same time, the sun's connection with Neptune can heighten inspiration and intuition, and its connection with Uranus can bring a breakthrough. An idea may suddenly make sense. A truth may become impossible to ignore. You may even glimpse a version of your future that feels more alive than the present. Just remember, a breakthrough does not always arrive as a perfect plan. Sometimes it arrives as a simple realization. I cannot keep living this way. Or I am ready to try something different. Or even, I finally believe I deserve more. That realization is enough to begin. Okay, so let's take a look-see at Wednesday. Wednesday is one of the biggest days of the week, y'all. The sun and Jupiter come together in Leo. This is expansive, creative, hopeful, and confident energy. It can bring optimism, visibility, new possibilities, and a stronger desire to express who you are. But Jupiter expands everything. So this energy can also tempt us to promise too much, do too much, or believe that we must make one enormous leap. You do not have to perform your confidence. You do not have to prove your worth. You do not have to become louder just to be seen. Leo's healthiest expression is not about demanding attention. It is about having the courage to live from the heart. So this transit is asking, what would I create if I stopped worrying about whether everyone understood me? Maybe you would write the book, start the business, share the video, apply for that opportunity, wear the bright colors, wear the bright hair, tell the truth, begin again. Returning to yourself means remembering that your light was never supposed to be approved by everyone or anyone. It was simply meant to be lived. Okay. Whew. Also on Wednesday, we have a full moon in Aquarius. Yay! I love full moons. They bring illumination, culmination, emotional awareness, and release. Because Aquarius is associated with freedom, individuality, friendship, community, innovation, and authenticity. And with the Sun and Jupiter together in Leo opposite this Aquarius moon, we may find ourselves balancing two different needs. One, the need to shine as an individual, and two, the need to belong. The need to express our unique truth, and the desire to be accepted by the group. This full moon may reveal where you have been editing yourself to fit in, where you have stayed quiet so you would not make anyone uncomfortable. Where have you pretended not to care because caring made you feel vulnerable? Where have you confused being accepted with truly belonging? Because real belonging does not require you to disappear. The people and spaces meant for you will not demand that you abandon yourself in order to remain included. This full moon may also bring clarity around friendships, communities, audiences, professional networks, or the larger vision you have for your future. You may see a turning point. You may realize that a group no longer reflects your values. You may feel ready to share your gifts with a wider audience. Or you may finally understand that your uniqueness is not the thing keeping you from belonging. It is the very thing that will lead you toward the right people. So your full moon reflection question is, where have I been trading authenticity for acceptance? And what am I ready to release so I can belong without losing myself? Okay? Also, around Wednesday, Venus in Virgo forms a very challenging connection with Mars in Gemini. Venus in Virgo wants things to be thoughtful, useful, intentional, and perhaps even perfect. But Mars in Gemini wants commitment, explore, follow all your ideas at once. So you may feel caught between wanting to get everything right and wanting to do everything immediately. You may also notice tension in relationships. Oh no, when one person wants precision and consistency, while the other wants freedom, movement, or variety. So try not to turn every difference into proof that something is wrong. And do not allow perfectionism to disguise itself as preparation. Because sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, I'm just not ready yet. But what we really mean is, I'm afraid someone will judge me. This week asks us to choose progress over perfection without choosing chaos over discernment. So returning to yourself means learning the difference between your intuition telling you to wait and your fear asking you to hide. Okay, as we close the week though, Mercury in Cancer forms a tense connection with Uranus in Gemini. Whoa! Mercury represents communication and thought. Cancer processes information emotionally and remembers the past, while Uranus can bring surprise, disruption, nervous energy, and sudden insights. So you may experience an unexpected conversation, a change of plans, a new idea, or a truth that arrives suddenly. Your mind may also feel overstimulated, so before reacting, pause. Not every thought requires an immediate response. I know, I had to learn that one. Not every message needs to be answered in the moment. And not every unexpected change is a crisis. So sometimes disruption is simply making space for the possibility you couldn't see before. Get quiet enough to ask, is this situation pulling me away from myself or pulling me inside? So as we move through this powerful, powerful, powerful week, remember that the sky is not demanding that you become someone new overnight. It is inviting you to stop abandoning the person you are becoming. Saturn asks you to rebuild with integrity. Pluto asks you to release what controls you. Neptune asks you to trust the dream. And Uranus asks you to awaken, while Jupiter asks you to grow. I know, it's a lot. And the sun asks you to shine. And the full moon asks you to release every version of belonging that required you become less of yourself. So here's the question I want you to carry with you this week. What would change if I stopped asking for permission to be who I already am? Sit with that. Journal about it. Let the answer come slowly, because returning to yourself is not always one dramatic moment. Sometimes it's one honest choice, followed by another and another, until one day you look around and realize you have built a life that finally feels like home. Thank you for joining me with this episode of Meridian Astrology Forecast. Leave me a comment and tell me, where in your life are you being invited to choose authenticity over acceptance? Until next time, keep looking to the stars and keep returning to yourself.